Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reflections with Baba Yusuf. I am your host, Mallam Baba Yusuf. The year 2025 has already begun with some key global events that will shape the political, social, and economic direction of the entire world. Today, I will reflect on what I consider as some key global determinants in 2025, starting with geopolitics. In 2025, global peace and economics will continue to be impacted by geopolitics. Global geopolitics is significantly influenced by the strategic foreign policy direction of the United States of America, amongst others. And it will continue to be so under the leadership of President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump will be sworn in today for the second time in office to usher in the Trump 2.0 era. The world is already witnessing the body language of President Trump as he ramps up his rhetoric and those of his allies within the United States of America and across the world. Billionaire Elon Musk, who Trump has assigned a key role in his administration, has already taken the lead in stirring up the hornet's nest with provocative rhetoric, which are indicators of what will likely happen during the tenure of President Trump, Trump 2.0. In the last couple of weeks preparatory to his inauguration, Trump has been posturing and giving indications of his potential foreign policy strategic direction, which is more or less a furtherance of his position during his first tenure. He has consolidated, or he wants to continue to consolidate, the Make America Great Again MAGA mantra and philosophy by stepping up rhetoric against Canada, Panama, Greenland, Mexico, etc., including the European Union, with some verbal attacks on the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, etc. Russia-Ukraine imbroglio. In the case of the Russia-Ukraine imbroglio, President Vladimir Putin is not likely to shift ground but rather refine his mid to long-term strategy, especially with the emergence of President Trump as the 47th President of the United States, with whom he has had a better relationship than with President Joe Biden. This is more so because, in my view, so far, President Putin's strategy has been working more for Russia than the US, EU, NATO strategy for Ukraine. Therefore, if the Russia-Ukraine imbroglio continues unabated without a change in political strategy, the war will continue to impact negatively on global and national economies. During Trump 2, we also expect to see this year a highly likely turnaround of events in the Russia-Ukrainian war because of President Trump's position on the Russia-Ukrainian war, which is completely the opposite of President Joe Biden's administration. President Trump did not hide the fact that he will bring to an end, or he wants to bring to an end, or force the hands of players to see to an end to the Ukraine-Russia war as against the push by President Trump, the European Union, and NATO, who rather continue supporting Ukraine to continue, quote unquote, fighting to the finish against Russia, which, in the opinions of some thought leaders, including my humble self, will be costlier for Ukraine, Russia, and indeed the global economy. Israeli-Palestine conflict. With regard to the Israeli-Palestinian war in Gaza, I don't expect much change because the successive US presidencies and administrations have maintained a fairly consistent strategic position and actions with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Therefore, in my view, in 2025, during Trump 2.0, I will not expect anything different as such. it will just be a scenario of the same actors in different costumes. I don't expect the fortunes of Palestinians to significantly change with regard to the US position to support or reduce support for Israel. In fact, in the last couple of days, President Trump has been very clear and unambiguous in saying that he is going to be very brutal in fighting Hamas to the finish, and he will be more assertive and decisive, which in his opinion will bring to an end the crisis. Whether that will be the solution or not will remain to be seen. But indeed, the position of the United States of America in this regard, in my opinion, will not really change the fortunes of Palestinians. What does Trump point to mean for Africa? In my view, when it comes to Africa, whoever becomes the president of the United States of America, the US agenda for Africa will pretty much remain the same. Nothing much of substance for us. The US and the Western powers will continue to feather their nests at the expense of Africa and Africans. Therefore, from the global geopolitical point of view, I do not expect any significant positive changes. Of course, it also speaks volume with regard to the fact that Africa is on its own. And therefore, we, the people of Africa in general and Nigeria in particular, need to do the needful to come out of our political and socio-economic doldrums. That being said, when the dynamics are escalated with global socio-economic impacts, for example, what is happening in Sudan, where the US and Russia are majorly the unseen hands, then we should take note with regard to the political dynamism of the emergence of President Trump so that we can strategize and position for better survival, growth, and sustainable development. Sub-regional political impasse and rising insecurity in Africa. The sub-regional political impasses and insecurity in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region and Sudan, is a source of concern for African and global peace and stability. Indeed, the relationship between President Trump, President Putin, and President Nahyan of the United Arab Emirates will likely play a role for Sudan if the ruling military regime is able to offer a deal to Donald Trump in trying to see how peace will come to that country. Of course, recently, the ambassador of Sudan to the United Nations hinted that they will propose a deal to Donald Trump. The days ahead will be interesting. The European Union and NATO versus Trump. The EU's position as they engage President Trump with the threat of his tariff strategy as his greater political power leverage will be another key determinant. With President Trump's rhetoric regarding Greenland and his position regarding Ukraine-Russia war, the EU and NATO need to recraft their strategy to counter President Trump's strategy in order to maintain a balance of political and socio-economic power around Europe. Interestingly, President Trump will have more allies in the European Union than he had during his first tenure, which will be largely due to the rise of unpopularity and rise to power of the far-right political parties and movements across Europe. In Italy, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, etc. These far-right political leaders of the European countries, either as incumbents or as oppositions, will be key levers of power for President Trump to assert himself as a global game changer. How the EU is able to reposition itself or prepare itself will be the interesting thing to watch. Global economic trajectory. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD's economic outlook, global growth will remain resilient in 2025 despite significant risks due to geopolitical tension, high public debt ratios, etc. The outlook projects global GDP growth of 3.3% in 2025, up from 3.2% in 2024 and 3.3% in 2026. Inflation in the OECD is expected to ease further from 5.4% in 2024 to 3.8% in 2025 and 3.0% in 2006. This will be supported by the continuous restrictive stance of monetary policy in most countries. Headline inflation has already returned to central bank targets in nearly half of the advanced economies and also close to 60% of emerging market economies. BRICS. The BRICS strategy is working, even though President Trump has been threatening sanctions for any country that remains in BRICS. But with about 15 more countries joining the BRICS in the last 3 months, BRICS is rising in popularity, which is an indication of its potential influence in the global geopolitics and economy. Indeed, the ongoing rhetoric by President Trump will further convince more countries to join the BRICS nations. I reckon that BRICS will strategize to counter the potential counter-maneuver of Trump, which is crucially driven by tariffs and sanctions. China. According to China observers in Central European Europe choice, in 2024, China experienced another year of economic slowdown, with the GDP growth rate declining to 4.8% year on year in the first 3 quarters, down from 5.2% in 2023. China's GDP growth rate will slow down further to 4.5% in 2025, with domestic demand playing a critical role in offsetting the slowdown in export. A key point for China is Trump 2.0, which is based on President Trump's consistent trade war against China, which he has ramped up, and that could escalate power competition between the US and China. President Trump is already calling for decoupling from China, which would not only have a major negative consequence on China, but also on the US and the rest of the world. President Trump will certainly leverage his tariff war strategy to counter China's strategy of bypassing the US tariff. But then the impacts will remain to be seen. Climate change. With the escalation of global warming in 2024 and the devastating humanitarian and socio-economic consequences on various countries and continents, the global climate change will have to be consolidated, especially with the almost fallout and outcome of COP29, which took place about 2 months ago in Baku, Azerbaijan, where developing nations were not really given a good deal. To add more gloom to the fight against climate change is the emergence of Trump too, because Trump is not favorably committed to fighting climate change. Therefore, the world has to move on without Trump in this regard. And progress will only depend on how achievements so far will be consolidated and progressed in the overall interest of all the global stakeholders. Artificial intelligence. The rapid rate at which artificial intelligence AI is growing and its impact across ecosystems and value chains is so fast that countries and organizations that do not take the advent of AI seriously will not only be left behind in development, but will suffer the devastating consequences of its threats and risks.